It's over to you, Rania.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Elka. Good morning or good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome this new enriching session of Feisty Talks is powered by Feisty Fusion Council of Women of Triparco International, a council dedicated to fostering collaboration and driving the well-being and success of women across industries. Of course, under the leadership of Dr. Elka Mahajan, and me, I'm Dr. Rania Lambo. I'm the Council Director, Greek Ambassador, Recording Leader. I'm very proud of our collective work, building spaces and platforms where women's voices, ideas, and leadership are not just recognized, but also amplified. So I have the privilege of moderating today's panel on a topic that is both complex, I would say, and deeply important: reactive abuse. Reactive abuse is this pattern that many people experience, but few truly understand. It occurs when someone responds to prolonged manipulations of intimacy or provocation or abuse with behaviors that might be seen as aggressive or reactive. Often, the person reacting is then unfairly labeled as the abuser, which can further distort understanding and hinder healing. Our goal today is to shed light on this often misunderstood phenomenon, explore its dynamics, and provide insights on how to support those who are impacted. So we will hear from experts who bring both professional expertise and lived experiences, helping us navigate these challenging but essential conversations with compassion, clarity, and nuance. And of course, encourage everyone here to engage with empathy, our audience, to ask questions and to consider all the perspectives shared, not just as information, but of course, as guidance for creating safer and more informed spaces, both in personal relationships and in broader communities. So without further ado, let's dive into this important discussion. And please join me in welcoming our panelists. Mr. Kamal Chandra Lohani from India is a principal. Dr. Rita Aguilar Gonzalez from Mexico, global academician. Mrs. Yamali Roy from India, educationist. Dr. Lynn Hill, best-selling author from South Africa. Professor Dr. Ambassador Mary Mia, global educationist from South Africa. And Ms. Preet Arora from India, social activist, cosmetologist, who all of you will guide us through understanding reactive abuse and the ways we can respond thoughtfully and supportively. So let's start with our first panelist, Professor Dr. Mary Mia. Welcome. And I would like to ask
Thank you very much.
For me, I always see you as actually as a healer and as a life coach. I don't know, I have this image of you. You're amazing in analyzing these topics. So first, how do you perceive this reactive abuse? According to your experience, to what you have seen from your environment, how do you perceive this phenomenon?
So thank you very much. I greet everyone in the universal greeting of peace with blessings. I have to say, firstly, it's lovely to be with everybody. And, as president of this Women's Council, when we have discussions like this, I feel really honored because it's discussions that nobody else seems to have bravery to have. So I think well done to every panelist here today who's taken that bravery stance to be able to have the discussion and say what's not normally said. It's what we have to do so that we get the awareness out there, and that's key. Yeah, it's lovely. And of course, to share the platform with my fellow sister, South African, Dr. Lynn Hill, always amazing to have her as well. Yeah, so we're talking reactive abuse. And you know what, Sister Rania, one of the biggest things is if you break it down, and I love doing this, I love breaking things down. If you talk about reactive abuse, break down those words. Firstly is the re and then the active, right? Active means something has to happen. Reactive means something has to happen to trigger that reaction. I know some people would say, like, really, do we have to have this English lesson right now? No, you don't. But in order to understand the philosophy, I think it's key to understand where this is going. So something has to happen for me, an action has to take place. So a reaction has to happen to that action in itself. And then the second word is, again, abuse. Two things, two syllables, ab and use, okay? Abuse. Abuse, if I just talk the word abuse without the word reactive to it, what does abuse mean? Somebody has this vision of violence. Somebody has a vision of somebody caused pain to somebody. If somebody says, I have been abused, you automatically think the worst thing has happened to you. If somebody says there's reactive abuse, you automatically think the worst of what just happened to the person anyway. So you have this victim analogy before it even becomes the true stance in front of you. Yet it's further from the truth. The person who is, the reactive abuse comes as a part of defense, in my opinion. It's almost a reaction to a self about you that you don't even know existed, because you've been pushed to that level. You've been pushed to a level of where you don't even understand yourself anymore. You don't know how to react anymore. Your stances are not heard. Your no is not heard. And what do you do to just be heard? So you become something you're actually not. And then you're made to feel a blame or a guilt for becoming that person. And then who becomes the abuser? The narcissist or whoever it was that created that you suddenly becomes the angel, and then your reaction becomes the problem. So the reactive abuse is not really the abuse itself. It's the reaction to abuse. And that for me is how you can really define reactive abuse. It's my reaction to me being abused, my silent abuse over a long period of time that created my reaction towards what you are doing to me. That is what is making me become this new me, whom I don't like. But my reaction should be speaking my no is I can't take it. Enough is enough. So reactive abuse is kind of, sorry, I know I'm speaking very passionately because I am passionate about this, but it's the only way to get across what this actually should be meaning. It's abuse, yes, but it's abuse that's being done, that's creating a reaction to it. And that is now my reaction. And the reaction to that is what is the problem that's out there right now.
Definitely. It's a physics law. Action, reaction is a Newton's law.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you're from science, so you would
Absolutely.
know this, right?
Yes. And actually, I have in mind these common patterns and types that actually I can mention. For example, the gaslighters. There are those, if you have ever heard this term, gaslighter, those who create confusion about reality or memory. Then they frame the other person as unstable. Or we have other category of image managers who are very invested in appearing calm or rational or victimized, especially to outsiders, or emotion provokers. So do you think that there are some specific patterns which are often associated, for example, with narcissistic or antisocial behavior, and this actually they are prone to this behavior? What do you think?
Well, absolutely. There definitely
The
are patterns. Yeah, there are definitely patterns, but I think the patterns don't sit in your reactive process. I think the patterns sit in the fact that certain behavior patterns of those who are the abusers, their patterns are what we have to look at. They have this very quiet pattern of narcissism, which you wouldn't even know is happening. You don't have the pattern in your reaction, though, because it's the first time you're actually reacting to this. Your reaction becomes worse because you're not understanding yourself in the method. But the patterns in the lifestyle, the patterns in the personality, the common patterns in the traits of the person who creates that reaction, the person who abuses somebody, those are patterns that definitely exist. And if you're somebody who actually, if you work with these people often, and many of us do, you would see that these are people who come from volatile spaces, who themselves don't get heard well enough, who themselves are withdrawn and yet find that this is the bullying tactic that kind of works, who themselves kind of don't have control over themselves, but feel controlling other people makes them feel somewhat okay about themselves. So they themselves are problems in themselves. And they have that pattern in their behavior, their pattern in their type, and their personality types. So when you look at the perpetrator in itself, they can exhibit some kinds of behaviors, like, for example, they would have the emotional dysregulation, for example. They would really have this impulsivity about them with no cognizance of feeling any form of remorse for anything wrong in that behavior. They feel justified in everything they are doing, even if it is wrong. You can say to them, you're impulsive and you're doing this and it's wrong. And for them, it's no, I am right. It's my way or no way kind of mentality. And they have this tendency also as a pattern to continuously blame the next person. It's always somebody else's fault that this has happened to me. They will not take responsibility or accountability for their own bad behavior or their own misdemeanor. As soon as it is pointed out, it becomes somebody else's fault. So these are patterns of these people. And yes, gaslighting is one of them, These are people that will have very much difficulty with empathy. They don't feel for the next person. They feel for themselves. And no, that kind of selfishness is the detrimental kind of selfishness. You get the selfishness, which is good because I'm taking care of myself. But that kind of selfishness is where they don't have the empathy. They're very used to the manipulation tactic. And that's where they get their victim to get to a point of that anxiety. Their victims get to the point of that depression. They get to the point of the lowest form of self-esteem, where the screaming against their personality is what they have to eventually do. Or the violence of where they pick up something to aim at you, because that becomes their form of reaction. And then suddenly they looked as if they're abusing the person, because that's their reaction. So they don't have the pattern. They might have a pattern if you are the victim or the victims are there. You might find the only pattern in the victim is they remain quiet for too long. So they might be people who have a pattern or a lifestyle or personality trait of coming from backgrounds where they were told, perhaps from a system or from a societal norm, that if you go through something, you need to be quiet. As a girl, you're not supposed to raise your voice. If you are married to somebody, then you can't speak against that family. So these are the societal norms that might create a pattern in the victim. So they themselves feel like, I can't speak up. But eventually they realize, I have to speak up. Maybe after they have a child or they have to stand up for themselves, they realize, I do have to have a voice. So another pattern of a victim might be there's somebody who's too used to people pleasing, continuously wanting to please everybody else, neglecting themselves in the process, until suddenly they realize, wait, I got to start setting some boundaries now. And you'll find many a time people who are these people pleasers or are these victims themselves, they tend to go and find or attract partners with similar attachment styles. And that is where you kind of have the clash, because then you have one who wants to control completely, and you don't want that anymore, because you start off knowing one thing about the person, that person becomes the total opposite. So these are the things that you would find as personality types, yes, but you'd also have these in terms of either side. So you'll have both sides have these patterns, so to speak, but the patterns are what stay when it comes to the perpetrator. But the victim, it seems to keep shifting because they keep trying to adjust to their circumstance. That's what I would find there.
Definitely, yes. And on the reactive side, we have those people who have high empathy, who are
Yeah.
emotionally expressive under stress, so they are over responsible, people with strong fairness and truth instincts. But what I want to say here is that reacting doesn't automatically make someone the healthy one. Context matters. Is the behavior, for example, occasional or repetitive? Is there repair or accountability, or it's just justification here and blame shifting? Does one person feel chronically unsafe or confused or on edge? I mean, these answers usually tell you who is driving the dynamic. So we need to be careful. And the role of trauma, what do you think? How does trauma history in one or both partners influence the likelihood or severity of reactive abuse?
Well, I think trauma history is one of the most significant influences of this, because if you are somebody who comes from this kind of historical background, it's going to definitely impact on your personality trait, number one. It's going to impact on your reactions, number two. So whichever part that you're sitting in, whether you're the perpetrator or the victim, your history actually does determine what you would do and how you would do it. Like I said before, sometimes it's just a societal norm that makes or molds you, or it's just you in your own right who tries to fight battles throughout your life, and then that molds you. But either way, your history plays its part. And if it's traumatic history, it's kind of even worse, because you don't deal with the trauma. You just keep going and thinking, I'm going to keep burying it under this carpet and leave it and leave it. Eventually, the carpet itself is going to evolve and the dust is going to go everywhere. So at some point, your history catches up. And that historical trauma that you have is going to eventually become the part of you that's going to be almost sensitive and then become too sensitive. So you have this increased sensitivity about you. So if you are an individual that have this traumatic history, you're kind of more prone to perceiving threats. You kind of read the threat before anybody else would. You're somebody who would like perceive something to be more deep than anybody else would, and somebody would start to think of you as paranoid. You keep thinking the worst about a certain scenario, but that's because you've got this increased or heightened sense of sensitivity, because you're leading to that heightened reactivity. So if you're talking reactive abuse, there has to be something that leads to that. So your traumatic history allows for you to be that sensitive someone to everything around you. And
Also,
what that
sometimes,
does ultimately,
also sometimes they feel real guilt that why did I
yes,
react so terribly? I mean,
absolutely.
something
And then
is
of course,
something wrong with me.
yes, and
That
then
is
of
also
course
a
now
very
the
dangerous premises.
perpetrator. Absolutely. And then the perpetrator plays on that to play on your guilt to make you feel guilty for you actually reacting in that way. So what happens is when you have that increased level of sensitivity and you kind of pick up on these things too quickly, automatically you have these trigger responses that happen at the same time. So your traumatic experiences that you have had will create a conditioned response in you. And that conditioned response that you have will cause you to react very intensely when anything triggers you. And that would remind you. So anything triggering you that reminds you of that past trauma or the historical trauma that you're talking about is going to trigger that heightened sensitivity. And that heightened sensitivity is going to create that heightened reaction, which will then be played on against you at some point. Automatically, that would then lead to the next thing, and that would be your emotional regulation challenge. That's where we all sit with, I can't regulate my emotion anymore. So I've had this increased sensitivity. I'm pushing towards this increased reactivity. I have this trigger now, and I need to respond, and I don't know how. So that trauma from my history actually impairs my emotional regulation of where I'm sitting at now. And that makes it very hard then for me to manage my reaction well enough. I can't even think clearly because I'm so emotionally overwhelmed in this scenario. So I'm going to actually not manage myself well in the stressful situation, which means my reaction is going to be that of the reactive abuse. So the pattern of behavior then becomes what? I'm a trauma survivor, yes, but I am unconsciously kind of seeking out or tolerating this abusive relationship because of this familiar pattern that I've been through. So my idea of fixing it or saving it is what? And that's where the question mark then lies. So your historical trauma does play its part with how you will react, because these are the things that you will go through. It's an increased sensitivity into your increased trigger, your response time. What is your trigger going to be, and how will you respond to the trigger? And beside that, then you lose control of your emotions. That's when you can't regulate them. You don't know how to deal with that. Challenge in itself is what leads to your reactive abuse, so to speak. And that is when then, like Ma'am Roy is saying, you're going to have the people pounce on you to say your reaction is actually abusive in itself. And they forget what contributed to you becoming that way in the first place.
Yes, definitely. And sometimes we have a mutual trauma amplification. I mean, when both partners have trauma histories, then triggers can collide. Because one partner's coping strategy that would be, for example, criticism or withdrawal, may activate the other's trauma, creating rapid
Yeah,
escalation.
you know,
This
and
person
the other thing,
will
Rania,
react in
that
that.
happens is very often you find people who meet, and these are like couples I'm talking about, they tend to meet based on the fact that they share similar experiences. And because they share the same kind of childhood experience or the same kind of childhood trauma, or let's say two people meet who have been divorced before, they meet and because of this familiar pains, they seem to meet and think, okay, that's the common ground they have, and they join forces. But as time progresses, their hidden traumas of what they've been through, the emotional baggage of not dealing with the pains associated with that trauma they went through, becomes a problem between them both. And then they start to question, wait, but we came from the similar backgrounds. How did we end up being totally against each other? It's because of what they've been through haven't been dealt with, that they're not seeing each other clearly. They're seeing their own reflections of what they want to see instead of what is the real between them both. And that's kind of where you also find these problems tend to happen. They don't see the real. There's no real there. There's this, like I'm saying, there's the reaction to everything that is happening because we don't know how to act in accordance to the authenticity of what I've been through. What has been the truth about what I've experienced? How will I react to it in my true essence of me that's going to maintain me? And that's where the reactive abuse comes from, because my reaction is totally not my truth. And yet it has to become my new truth. And that's when you have to learn how to draw through it.
Definitely, I could see that trauma doesn't actually cause abuse, but it intensifies emotional reactions and make people more vulnerable to coercive dynamics. and healing trauma, especially through techniques like nervous system regulation or trauma-informed therapy, which is very trendy nowadays. This can significantly reduce the likelihood and severity of reactive abuse. So thank you very much, Ambassador Marine. I don't know if you have more time to reply to one more question. How can friends or actually your family support someone without blaming them for their reactions?
Oh, I think it's so key, to support anyone. The first thing I'd say to anybody who's trying to support somebody going through this is please don't blame them. It's enough trauma that they're going through within themselves for you to have to start pointing fingers and saying, but I told you so, or we warned you beforehand, or you've gone through this now and look at what you've done to our family name. All of these things about the blame, stop with that. Listen to what they have to say, listen to their pain without judging, without the judgment, because you need to validate that person's feeling, validate where they come from, validate their experience, but without criticizing it, without criticizing them, without minimizing what their reactions were, because their reaction is coming from pain. Now, if you're going to minimize and criticize their reaction, what are you saying about who they are and what they're coming from? So we've got to listen without judgment. And the thing is, if I want to help somebody who's been through it, I got to learn first, educate myself first. So I'd say to anybody who wants to help somebody, learn about trauma. Learn what does that do? Learn what is this reactive abuse we're talking about today. Listen to every other speaker. Listen to what we're saying. Learn about it. Learn the complexity about what is an abusive relationship, what cultivates that, what makes it worse, how to learn about these things. Because the more you educate yourself about it, the more you can know for yourself, of course, but then also the easier it would be for you to help somebody else. But the other thing is refrain from, when you talk to people, refrain from saying, why didn't you do ABC? Or you should have done ABC. But we warned you about ABC. Stop with the blaming. That's the worst thing that we could do, because focus rather on the empathy. Focus on the actual support. I'm here and I'm listening to you. I'm listening without judging you. And then I think encourage professional help, of course, depending on the level of trauma. Because sometimes, remember, I can be there for my family member, but even though it might be my expertise in my field, because of this is my family, I'm not going to be able to really help without judging. So I'd rather get professional help for this person and be the support from a family. But, the thing is, professional help is sometimes very required in order to see the person through it. And beside that, practical support is also key. Just the help with daily tasks. If somebody is going through the worst form of depression, they don't want to even they don't want to even enter a bathroom, they're kind of neglecting themselves completely. Be that practical support that helps with the daily tasks. Be that somebody who goes and does the school drive on that day so that that person is not feeling so overwhelmed. Be that person who provides the safe space to just talk. Be the safety zone for that someone who's not going to feel judged, who's not going to feel criticized, who's just going to be able to share, to laugh, to cry, to laugh again, to shout, to scream, and then you're not going to judge that. But be that practical support structure that's going to maybe even help them, go and pick them up, take them to the professional appointment that you set up. But be the practical support, as opposed to just standing there, offering it, and then walking away. It's got to be continuous support, and that support is so, so key. But again, I can never say this too much. Don't blame. Stop with the blame. Stop with the I told you so. Stop with the you should have known better. None of us are perfect. Everyone's going to make these mistakes, but it's not up to us to judge that. Yeah. It's up to us to grow with that person through it.
Fantastic, fantastic. So this structured approach that you suggest, listen first, judge later, acknowledge the pattern, not just the incident, separate accountability from shame, provide emotional grounding, help them reclaim safety boundaries, and of course, encourage professional support, model compassion, not criticism. So friends and family actually support best how? By acknowledging fear and stress, by validating. Validation is a very strong term in psychology. Validating the person's humanity and helping them take safe, controlled steps forward without labeling them as an abuser. Wonderful insights, as always, Ambassador Marine. We're mesmerized by your analysis, psychological analysis. You are a fantastic expert on this. You're the best. If you agree, Dr. Alka, I think you agree.
Well, I don't want to speak at this moment because when I have to start speaking about the president of the Feisty Fusion Council, I'll just go on. I mean, this is a topic that she's pretty passionate about. And I think people who have gone through certain experiences in life, whether it be in a relationship, whether it be the professional front, or whether it be with anything to do in life. I mean, personally, for me, it's been a professional reactive abuse. And so I know how it feels. And but the most important thing over here, I feel, is that when you understand, when you yourself, because see, nobody's going to help you but yourself. This is something I always believe in.
Yes.
And when you realize what is wrong with you, you have to start taking steps. What steps you have to take, I'll talk about it later, but first let's everyone speak, because we have only about half an hour more to go. So I would like everyone to say
Yes, of course.
their bit before I
Thank
say
you,
anything.
Ambassador.
Yeah.
Thank you again,
Thank you.
and
Thank you,
let's
Thanks,
move
Rania.
to our invited man. We have one man today,
Yes,
Mr. Kamal
very feisty of
Lohani.
him. Very feisty of him.
Yes, so I have a very interesting question, which is close to neuroscience, what I love most. So, what psychological mechanism, Mr. Kamal, drives someone to react abusively in response to prolonged manipulation or emotional abuse?
Thank you,
Fight
ma'am.
or
Thank
flight,
you.
and things like that. Yes.
Good evening, and namaskar from my side, from Nainital, Uttarakhand, India. And thank you very much, Rania ma'am, for giving me the opportunity. And whatever I have understood, I would like to satisfy you with my answer. I think when someone faces long-term manipulations or emotional abuse, his or her mind goes into survival mode because of constant stress, fear, and feeling powerless. Emotions build up inside. Over time, self control weakens, anger bursts out, and the person reacts aggressively or abusively, not to harm, but to protect themselves or be heard. When someone reacts abusively after prolonged manipulations or emotional abuse, it is often driven by psychological survival mechanism, not inherent cruelty, such as chronic stress and emotional exhaustion. Long-term abuse overwhelms self-control and coping capacity. Threat response, I mean fight mode. The brain shifts into defense, reacting with anger and to regain safety or power. The third point is erosion of self-esteem. Constant invalidations create shame and frustrations that can erupt outward. The fourth one, learned patterns. Exposure to abusive behavior normalizes aggression as a communication tool. The last one is loss of emotional regulation, gaslighting, and manipulation, pair judgment, and impulsive control. I think this reaction is called the reactive abuse. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kamal. And definitely we mentioned about the most important mechanism, fight or flight, stuck on fight. I mean, here we have the amygdala. Amygdala is the region in the brain which is responsible for emotions, for fear. So amygdala in the brain becomes hyperactive. We have the prefrontal cortex, which goes partially offline there, and anger and aggression become fast automatic responses. So this, what seems like overreaction, is often a survival response that is being rehearsed too many times. It's about erosion of emotional regulation and, of course, identity, I could say, fragmentation, self-betrayal. Thank you very much, Mr. Kamal.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I would like to go now to Miss Lena. Okay. I would like to ask you what the role of fear here, stress, in reactive abuse.
Well, fear. So if I may, just based on what Dr. Marine had said, the concept of reactive abuse and breaking that down. For me, it was here, it's not really reactive abuse. It is a response to a period of sustained abuse. And so that in itself could cause a little mystification and even unnecessary judgment on the victim who is reactively responding. I think fear, when you are living in fear, eventually you do not recognize yourself. When fear overrides every decision, when you are feeling like you are out of control, you are not going to be making the most rational decisions. But again, this is not you in your true, and I speak here of the survivor-centeredness. This is not you in your true identity. This is what the identity, or the fractured identity rather, that has been produced as a result of. So when you, and today, and just reading over some notes, it was very insightful for me, because it was like I was looking in the mirror with regards to two life stories that I had needed to endure, and where you don't even realize that as a result of fear. So remember that when we, Dr. Rania, when none of our behaviors, not from a primary abusive perspective, nor from a reactive response perspective, none of those behaviors happen in a vacuum, that all behaviors are contextual. But as a society, we have contextualized some behaviors over others in terms of whether it is culture, whether it is race, whether it is gender, particularly gender. And so the concept of fear and anxiety is not the root cause. In fact, even primary abuse is not, it is an effect of a cause. And where you're looking at anxiety and fear, they are consequences of a root cause. And the consequences of that root cause, the root cause being coercive power, the root cause being aggression and domination over a sustained period of time. And so fear and anxiety play a huge role in us. The victim who is responding, where she feels silenced, she feels trapped, she feels that her identity has collapsed, and so she does not become herself. And that was one of the reasons why I, for example, walked out of a marriage, when I was able to say, but this is not who I am. I don't recognize myself. And so as a result of that, appeasing that anxiety, not wanting to live in fear, you try to cultivate this hypersensitivity around taking responsibility, even if it's not your fault, around remaining silent to appease the peace. But all that fear and anxiety actually does for you is that it actually fractures your identity even more, and by unconscious, through an unconscious process, gives the primary abuser the permission to actually continue. And so for me, the solution around that is that we need to start looking at things more contextually as a society, that even when we are not in abusive relationships, we actually need to introduce the concept of voice and the concept of mental health at a level of early childhood development and actually even during primary school years, so that, as Dr. Marine was speaking, that was almost an example of adult trauma. If we intervene healing and allow healing to run its course at earlier times in our life, we would then be able to recognize abusive and coercive power patterns more openly and see it for what it is. And I know I'm rambling now, so I'm going to stop here. If there's anything else I missed.
Well, it's wonderful, and thank you very much for sharing your personal experiences and the feelings. Actually, the responsive, as you said, is defensive, not strategic. True abuse is about control, but reactive abuse is about escape or self-defense. And stress and fear, of course, narrow thinking, so the person may lash out verbally or even act physically, not to dominate, but to make the threat stop. Thank you very much, Ms. Lim, for your amazing insights. And now let's move to Mr. Shamilia from Ms.
India.
Samaria, yes, Shamalia Roy. So what strategies can help individuals recognize that they are reacting abusively without feeling shame or guilt?
See, the first thing that attacks a person who is reacting is confusion, because he or she is naturally never this abusive. This way, they never react. And that's why the first thing we have to practice is to become calm. You have to recognize that the other person has been continuously instigating me, continuously provoking me, continuously putting me into stress, into anxiety. I know it is very difficult, easier said than done, but it might come with practice. So we what I discussed with Merin, that guilt is a major factor when that person reacts abusively. Reactive abuse. That is the first thing. When that person calms down, that first thing stuck her or him is that, how could I do this? How could I talk like this? How could I behave like this? Why am I telling you this? Because I'm telling you some practical example. I'm giving you a practical example. In school, I've seen it. A 11th standard boy, very quiet and calm. We never knew that he's being bullied. He's being by a gang of boys. His money is being taken from. He never complained, never said anything. Very quiet little boy. Then one fine day, he took up a desk and just struck one of the boy. And it was all black and blue. His bruises were terrible. And naturally, all of us, we started shouting on him. Then I came over there and I said, no, this something must have triggered him terribly, because he's not this kind of a boy. Let us find out that. What was wrong? Then we asked, and he himself was crying, how could I do this? Why did I do this? I have become a demon. Are you understanding? His guilt was so much. Then we investigated and we find out that for months he's been tortured by this gang, taking away his money at the canteen, taking out, tearing up his books and things like that. Then we told him that you should have complained. You should have at least shared with your parents, so that parents can come and talk about that in the PTM, during parent teachers meeting. So the first thing is that we have to accept and we have to recognize that I am being abused. I am being manipulated. I am being gaslighted. We have to be very aware of that. With young children, it is very difficult, but in schools, if we in classrooms, if we discuss about all these things, then they also will become very, very aware of this. And why it is this reactive abuse has become very dangerous nowadays, because of social media.
Yeah.
Because on social media, anger escalates very fast, very fast, and you never know to what length it can be used against you. And when somebody you start reacting and you start saying that, no, you are blaming my community, I am this, you are blaming my religion, I am this. you never know. Maybe after 10 months, 20 months, that particular piece you have written on social media might be used against you. So we have to be very, very careful about this. But yes, we don't have to blame. We have to find out. I think that this is one of the strategy. I think that what is the thing that triggered me, not who triggered me. What is the thing actually which triggered me? Why did I reacted like this? I think this is a strategy, and of course, there are platforms, online platforms also in schools. There are people whose help you can take when you are being abused, when you are feeling anxious, you are feeling stressed because of certain happenings around you, people misbehaving with you. So that can be, it can be in a way, it can be controlled. Reactive abuse.
Yes, absolutely. So the key here, I could say, is to frame or reframe actual abuse as seeing as actions. Abuse is about actions, not identity. If we frame it this way, this helps people notice what they did without collapsing into defensiveness. And you can say,
Absolutely.
instead of saying, I use the harmful behavior, you can say this. Instead of saying, I'm a bad person, or I'm terrible, I'm horrible, you can say, I use the harmful behavior. So this means we can use neutral, descriptive language. The power of language here is important because it lowers the emotional threat. And we talk about how we should learn here behavioral labels, not moral ones, because clear labels make patterns visible and easier to interrupt. It's all about the body language also. We can track body cues before words or actions and all.
Absolutely.
Separate. When you say, I didn't mean to hurt him. I didn't mean to hurt him. This means we separate intent from impact. People often avoid recognition because they say this, I didn't mean to hurt them. So intent actually explains behavior and impact evaluates it. You can acknowledge good intentions and still take responsibility for harm. And we can normalize imperfection while we are committed to change. So we can practice self-compassion, or we can focus on repair always and not self-punishment. So very, very important what everything that you mentioned, very important. And let's go to our second round. Mr. Kamal, are you ready? How can reactive abuse be identified early, especially in relationships where both parties are victims and perpetrators in different ways?
Thank you very much, ma'am, for giving me the second round. I think reactive abuse can be identified early when one person's anger appears mainly after repeated hurt, control, or provocation. We can have some signs like sudden emotional outburst, guilt after reacting, and a pattern where one partner triggers while the other explodes. When both feel hurt, but responses are unequal and escalating, it signals a cycle of reactive abuse that needs early awareness and support. Reactive abuse can be identified early by noticing patterns and context, not just isolated behavior. We have to keep some points in our mind, like reactions follows provocations, and one person outburst consistently occurs after manipulations, gaslighting, or emotional harm. And second one is escalating cycles. Conflict follows repeat loop, provocations, reactions, blame, guilt, and disproportionate emotional intensity. Responses feel sudden or extreme compared to the immediate trigger. Next point, post conflict remorse. The reacting partner shows guilt, confusion, or self blame rather than control or entitlement. So early identifications requires looking at power dynamics, intent, and triggers, not labeling one person as purely abuser. Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Yes,
This
thank
is
you
my
very much for
opinion,
this
as I have
testimony.
understood whatever I have understood.
Yes,
Thank you,
definitely. We need
ma'am.
to
Thank you.
mention about the cycles. We need to name the cycle of the person, and of course, pose interactions at the very first somatic warning signs. So rebuild safe boundaries, and trauma-informed here again mediation could be very helpful. So all these suggestions that you mentioned, it's very important. Somatic warnings before escalation, and the boundary testing patterns. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
Kamal.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
And Ms. Lena, I want to ask, I think it's my best question here, that how can schools, workplaces, and communities be educated to better support victims without unfairly labeling the reactive party as the primary abuser?
Oh, and that for me is where the journey almost needs to start, Dr. Rania, that first of all, there's so many layers to what I want to say here. First of all, it is the concept of mental health as just whole. That while that, that does come addition to the curriculum, emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence are not seen as nice to haves, but they're actually seen as integral to the school system. And so from a school perspective, it would be introducing the concept of mental health, introducing the concept of it's okay to ask for help. From an awareness perspective, it would be to educate and empower children and teachers, because a school in itself is an opportunity for various levels of power dynamics to actually play out, whether it's between principal and teachers, between teachers and children, and between peers. And so it would really be, again, from a gender perspective, from a social narrative perspective, to actually begin to say, let us differentiate between authentic power and borrowed power, and to teach that differentiation very, very early in the child's life, to create the awareness of what coercive control looks like, of what manipulation looks like, all of the things that by the time we are adults called into relationships, that we are able to realize what those things look like. The other thing is that from a school perspective and changing the culture at school's perspective, I speak South African. I don't know if it is like it across the world, but there is still a huge punitive emphasis on when something happens. There is never enough time, or it's not a priority to contextualize what preceded this moment, because with reactive abuse, there is usually a few preceding moments or years that have actually led to that moment. And so I think it would be a combination of creating awareness on those very principles that allows, that causes gender-based violation, that causes bullying on very many levels. What is power? What is healthy power? What does healthy power look like? What does healthy fear look like versus irrational fear and aggressive and coercive power? And then to also open it up for individuals, for children to speak about, through whether it is through empathetic storytelling, but to know that their voices can be heard, and to also teach, very importantly, to teach contextual accountability. Yeah. Because accountability without context becomes blame.
I don't know how possible this can happen. In Greece, in my country, young people become more and more violent and aggressive. We had every day very serious and alarming phenomenon of violence between peers, mostly. This is becoming out of control, and I don't know really how much teachers actually they need training, what you mentioned, and of course a trauma-informed education that could help maybe. I want to say, if you look at the big picture, when systems ignore these power dynamics, what is happening? They often punish the person who finally made the harm visible, but this is not correct. When systems are educated beforehand to recognize these patterns, then they can intervene sooner and far more fairly. And this means workshops, training, everything that can help teachers to give them some, skills and tools, because we are not psychologists, we are not mentors. I mean, we're not trained as educators to be psychologists. How we can handle these difficult situations, including me also. And in cyber world also, it's even more difficult. Students are suffering here. In Greece, we have very high rates of cyberbullying. We have the high rates in among all European countries in cyberbullying.
So we have to teach the children to distance and delay. Distance yourself from that particular, wherever in social media you are being abused, distance yourself, cut yourself off from that, and delay your response. I think these two little things teachers can teach the school children: distance and delay.
But you know very well that students don't speak up easily. I mean, they prefer to talk to their classmates or their friends. They don't speak openly they're afraid to speak to their teachers or to the parents, very well. So it needs talent from the side of a teacher to unlock the child, or to look through the problems and the struggles that he or she faces.
Can I just say something? Sorry, I'm not in my video because I'm busy trying to prep to break fast, but I just want to comment because I'm listening, and this is one of my weak points, especially with children in school. I think one of the things I found, and which I'm doing in most of the schools right now, is there's a 3-tier thing. So like Lynn was saying, it's very important for us to get to the schools at an early stage. But for me, it's crucial because one of the things I found by working in these different schools, and I work in all different kinds, including universities, is there is this level of non-support and denial from parents or guardians that children are going through these things. And there's also the level of denial from parents and guardians that their children are bullies in schools, for example. So that once these children are identified for what they're going through or being the bully at a school, and you go and calling the parent or the guardian to say, this is what I've just found your child doing, they refuse to believe that because they're in complete denial that the child might have that trait in them. So for me, it's ideal. Yes, it's important for us to work with the teachers and the children, and especially the peers with themselves. But it's also very important for us to educate and make parents aware. Yeah, this is very important to have these discussions with your child and listen. When when an educator speaks about your child, that educator is seeing the true child sometimes, as opposed to what you may be seeing at home. So it's very easy for us to say this, but we also need to make sure there are spaces in schools where children feel safe to go to, where they know that if I speak here, I'm not going to be hounded. If I speak here, even if my parent is called in, I'm not going to be victimized. So it's very important for us to create these safe spaces in schools at an early age, because like we said, when I was asked about the trauma and the history, if we can teach children early on enough to be aware of certain things they may be going through, then we can avoid that traumatic history from even starting in the first place. And that for me is key. Sorry, I just had to say that. Thanks.
Yes, I agree that this starts from parents. For example, even if we talk them for hours and we yell at our students, if parents don't set the limits of the screen time, for example, the screen time limits, the boundaries, we can't do anything. So this starts definitely from parents. And we need to be constantly in collaboration with them through pedagogical sessions. I don't know how. But parents should be involved in this process, which is not happening, unfortunately. I mean, parents, they're very busy. They're working both day and night. They are so difficult to reach out. I mean, I speak from my experience when I was appointed in a public school in the remote islands of Greece in 2009. I had students who had knives, who had guns. who were coming from families, divorced families. Their parents were totally abandoned them. They never come to reach to ask me for their academic performances. We talk about the students of 15 16 years old who didn't could also write a signature. Many issues. The parents were not, open for collaboration. So again, this needs talent, and again, this needs training how to be effective in collaborating with parents. So everything comes to how we can be trained as educators, because things have changed in comparison to what was happening in the past. So prevention is the key. So Ms. Samalia, are there effective interventions to prevent a cycle of reactive abuse from escalating?
As I have used this method with my students, and I just now I have told about it, I always tell them that whenever something is triggering you, either if it is possible, distance yourself from there, move away, go away, leave the page, do not interact on social media, do not respond, and either do that distance or delay it. You're very angry. Of course, you're very angry. You want to react, you want to say something, but delay it a little bit. And as you said, a proper collaboration is needed between teachers, the school management, and parents.
Absolutely.
That is, I know, a very, very idealistic condition, but it is not that something cannot be
It's
done.
necessary.
Can be done. It can be done. And yes, ma'am, it is so necessary. And another thing, I think in a way, our education system all over the world is failing because we are making children very materialistic, extremely materialistic. So along with yes, how to earn your livelihood, how to have a good life um, from materialism. Along with that, we need to teach a little bit about humanism also. As you said, as you have mentioned, that empathy. Yes, what is empathy? How can you? There are methods. Psychologists say there are methods with which you can grow empathy especially in kids because they are like clay. So those things needs to be introduced. It is high time. It is high time. Too mechanistic the society is becoming. This cannot be done. This is the beginning of undoing totally the society itself will disintegrate if it goes on like this. And we have to catch them young. We have to catch them young.
Definitely.
And my
So,
advice, if anybody has faced any social media, I have faced many a times. That's why I'm telling you, from social media, this kind of people are attacking you because of your opinion, because of whatever you have posted, whatever you have said. Just leave.
Yeah,
No need. No need to take the trigger.
absolutely.
Just leave the page. Just leave those people. Just throw them out from your friend list.
Yeah, wonderful.
yes, so I could say that reactive abuse should never be used to excuse ongoing harmful behavior. It just explains how escalation happens, not who is responsible. And prevention
Yes.
works best when people committed to stopping harm even when they feel provoked.
Mm.
Thank you very much, all of you, and of course, Dr. Alka.
Yeah,
It's a pleasure.
I just loved everything that was said over here. I think it was so necessary that everybody really understood this, so specifically and so articulately because, reactive abuse, the word itself, uh, what is gaslighting, narcissism, a narcissistic personality disorder, because all of them are involved somewhere or the other. Sometimes, we also confuse emotional abuse, passive abuse. I think passive abuse is something that all of us indulge in at some point of time, by giving someone the silent treatment, by, behaving in a very hostile manner with someone. This is also a kind of, survival mechanism. But I always say, like all of you have so much focused on mental health. I think it's all about the mind. If we can train our mind not to react to toxic situations, not to react to toxic people, not to react to people who are always in judgment, I think that is the key to being so powerful within yourself, because you have control your mind not to, get affected by certain things that are malicious, judgmental, because nobody has a right to pass any kind of judgment on you, because everybody makes mistakes, like all of you almost said that. And the story about the angel and the devil, which was mentioned, I think our sister Mehreen mentioned it, that the devil, the person who is being inflicted at times becomes the devil, whereas he actually is the angel. That is why I say it is so important to train your mind. Mental calisthenics is so important. People think that, oh, holistic wellness, this is nothing. No, it is everything. Mental health is everything. Holistic wellness is everything. Because if we start investing in our holistic wellness, we won't be facing all these problems in life. Now, be it at the young level, I mean, you said, Sister Lynn did mention, we need to catch them young. Shamli also mentioned that we need to catch the kids young. We need to ensure that even the teachers, who are teaching children are also, not going through these kind of things. Because many times we're talking of happy schools. In India, we're trying to talk of happy schools. But how can we have a happy school where the teachers are also suffering? And how can the teachers pass on those healthy vibes to the children when they themselves are, suffering? And when the management, they have their own agendas. So it's a materialistic world. We need to come out of this. If we really need to nurture the young ones, and really need to make a beautiful world, a world where everybody is living in a space that is healthy, that is, safe, that is not judging them, then only, we can succeed. We're talking about sustainable development goals. How are we going to reach them when these things are still happening? You go to any organization, any school, any college, we have all these cases. And the ones who are in power, if they see someone else coming in who is even more powerful than them, or who probably knows more than them, and is becoming popular very soon, so there starts your tragic, sad story of abuse, silent, and you keep on tolerating it because, like you said, Sister Mehreen said that you've been conditioned by societal norms, and because you've been conditioned, you don't say anything. And then comes a time when that volcano bursts, and then that's the time everybody is there to witness that, and they say, wow, she is so explosive, or he is always angry, he's this, because they've seen you at that time. So you were mentioning, Shamli, about to just leave. Yeah, there is something in psychology, but of course psychologists are still working at it, known as the gray rock technique. Gray rock technique. And that is why I always tell everybody, it's so important to journal. It's so important to write. It's so important to, if whatever happens in the day, good things and bad things need to be noted down. So the gray rock technique is document whatever happens instead of reacting at that point of time. When you are documenting it, you're pouring your heart and soul to your personal diary. You document everything. You obviously you do not engage with those people who are trying to abuse you in some way, because only you know that. The world doesn't know that. To the world, they're all angels. To the world, you're the one who's not doing the right things. But someday things will come out into the open. So you need to document things and create a safe place to just exit. Leave that place, like Shamli said. But then you have to have the guts. And if you have a strong mind, you'll know that if not here, then maybe my calling is somewhere else. And if you really have the ability, you're not going to be scared of stepping out of your comfort zone. So it's so important that we teach our young ones right from the very beginning to have a powerful voice and not to just keep on taking things. They need to go home and tell their parents. They need to go home and tell their teachers, or in school, tell their teachers, even the principal for that matter, the head of the institution. They need to know all this. Only then can we have a world which is beautiful, like I keep on saying, beautiful, blessed, blissful, and absolutely, bountiful. And again, Everyone is unstoppable. Everyone is unique. So you have to understand this. And once you understand this, all these things are not going to affect you because you've trained your mind you've nurtured yourself to, sort of let the challenges come, let the tough things come. But since you are tough, you'll be handling them and pretty well. So thank you to all our wonderful panelists, erudite panelists. Each and every one of you made all these things so clear. It's so important that we have discussions like this because people don't even know of these terms. They know that this is happening, something like this is happening, but they don't know how to give it a structure. They don't know how to voice opinions. So the way you explained everything, I think it makes it so clear. And I hope you can all share this video. I'll share it with all of you. Share it with everyone so that they understand what are they suffering. And it's not good to just remain quiet because you'll get a chance to open your mouth, but then you should have the guts at that point of time to say it. And if you have a diary or a documentation as proof, people better believe you. People better believe you. So that's very important. And to my lovely friend, Dr. Rania, I mean, she always does an amazing job. She's a feisty, fearless diva herself. She's gone through so many challenges. When she tells me her stories, the way she handles students in a remote place in Greece and how she managed that there was no electricity, there was nothing, and she was handling those they were actually monsters, but she did it because she had this power within her. So it's always the power within that no matter what comes your way. I know Sister Lynn has gone through a lot. I know my friend Shamali has gone through a lot, and even Dr. Mehreen has gone through a lot, but and even I have gone through a lot. But the thing is, we need to train our mind at the end of the day. If our mind is strong, nobody can, take our strength away from us. But if you give the control of your life in someone's hands, then that's where, these abuses, different kind of narcissism, gaslighting, manipulation, emotional abuse, passive abuse, everything comes in and you become the scapegoat for it. So don't do that to yourself. Remember holistic wellness, invest in yourself, stay happy, stay healthy, stay bountiful, and stay tuned to Chilparko International's Feisty Talks. Our lovely, lovely diva, Dr. Professor Rania is always there, moderating very powerful sessions. And we are going to have even more powerful sessions coming up. So we hope to see you there. And if you could drop some comments, it would be lovely. Any questions to our panelists? Even more lovelier. Any questions to our lovely panel moderator? Please do that because we all over here are trying to do our bit to make planet Earth a beautiful place, a healthier place, and a safe place for all of us to live in. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. And see you next time. Hasta mañana till we meet again. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.